So in this video, we're going to talk about the key features of graphs. We're going to talk about all the functions that we talk about in Algebra 1 that you'll see on your STAR test. So our objective or the learning intention for today is you're going to be able to identify those key features of functions from graphs. And in particular, we're talking about the three functions that we look at in Algebra 1. We're going to identify the key features first of a linear function, which is basically a line. We're going to identify the key features of a quadratic function, which is your U shape. And then we're probably going to introduce you to a new one that you probably haven't seen that much of. We're also going to identify the key features of a exponential function. So this is the success criteria. You should be able to identify the key features of all those particular graphs by the end of this video. So we're going to start off with what we call our linear function. And when we talk about our linear functions, our linear function has two distinct features. And remember, the equation of any linear function, or linear meaning a line, the equation of a linear function is y is equal to mx plus b. And this gives us our two distinct features, which is going to be the m, which is your slope, and the intercepts. Well, one of your intercepts is going to be this b value, and that's the y-intercept. And the other intercept may cross the x-axis somewhere. So we have an x and a y-intercept when we talk about this. And before we start this, I also want to talk about the domain and the range. Remember, your domain is the set of all x values that are possible. And your range is the set of all y values that are possible. Well, if we look at a line continues forever in both directions. So you're literally, if you look at the left to right movement for the domain, the line will go all the way to the left and all the way to the right. So our domain for this function is all real numbers. And our range, the line is going up and down forever. That's our range, up and down. That's going forever. So our range of this function is also all real numbers. So we're going to go and identify those key features, the slope and the intercept. And recall that if we want to find a slope from a graph, we take 2 points on the graph. And so I'm going to take this point right here, and I'm going to take this point up here. And from there, I'm going to count my slope. I want to know slope is rise over run. So how much do I rise by? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm rising by positive 5. Rise means plus 5. And I'm going to run to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, since I went to the left, that is a negative 4. So my slope here, m, is equal to the rise, which was positive 5, over the run, which is negative 4. And if I clean that up, that's just negative 5 fourths. Now to find my intercepts, I want to know where does this graph cross the x or y axis at. And we see that when we look at this, it's crossing the x-axis, that this value right here. Let me blow that up a little bit for you. We see that that x-axis that it's crossing at is at the point negative 1. Well, we write the intercept as a point, and since that's a point, the x-intercept always has a y value of 0 because it sits on the x-axis, so you never rise off the x. So we have a point negative 1, 0 for the x-intercept. And then for the y-intercept sits on the y-axis, so you don't run, you just rise on this axis. And that point is going to be 0. The x value is 0, and the y value going down, so that's negative 1. So here are your x. Here's the x-intercept. That is the x-intercept. And here is the y-intercept. It's where it crosses the y-axis or touches the y-axis. Now, the domain of this function, recall what we just said, the domain is going to be, it goes on all the way to the left, all the way to the right forever. So the domain is all real numbers. And the range of the function, it goes up and down forever, is also all real numbers. Every linear function will have a domain of all real numbers and a range of all real numbers. So let's look at one more example and talk about a linear function again. And again, let's be able to identify those values. So if I want to find the slope, pick 2 points. So I have this point sitting here, and I have this point sitting here. If I want to find my slope, I'm going to count my rise first. So I rise by 1, 2, 3. So this is a +3 rise. And I run by 1, 2. And since I ran to the right, it's a +2 run. So my slope, M, is just equal to +3 divided by +2. In that case, that's just 3/2. Now, if I want to find my intercepts, well, look, it's crossing the x-axis here. And remember that at x-axis, the y value is always 0. So it's crossing at 2, 0. And then the y-axis, the y-intercept is sitting here. And notice that this x value is always going to be 0 because you never run on this axis. You always rise. That value is 0, -3. And we want to find our domain and range again. So remember, this is the x-intercept, crosses the x-axis. And this is the y-intercept, crosses the y-axis. The domain of the function, recall, is every line, all real numbers. The range on this function, every range, is also all real numbers.